Hi everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of Moons and Mythos. This is episode number 16 with me, your host, David Farrell, and my beautiful, wonderful co-host, Kelley Hunter. Hi Kelley, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah.
Right, so we were just laughing off screen, 16 episodes in, good for us. We've never done, either of us have done a monthly astrology show before, but here we are. Almost a year and a half later, and we're up to episode number 16, which I think is going to be a really important one. They've all been super important, super intense in 2023, but today we're going to be looking at the lunar cycles of the new moon in Scorpio at 20 degrees of Scorpio on November the 13th, and then we're going to be having a look at what's going to pop out 2 weeks later on November the 27th with a full moon at 4:51 of Sagittarius. Now, Kelley has been super busy this week doing videos with a number of people. So maybe you saw the video that she did with our wonderful astrologer friend, Pam Gregory. And so I know that Kelley's keen to bring in some more of the Kuiper Belt Objects, the KBOs, which is really a cornerstone of what Moons and Mythos is about. So, Kelley, the floor is yours, lovely. Where are we going to go today? What do you want to tell us about the new moon in Scorpio that's coming up?
Well, it's full of KBO activity.
Right.
And so that is what Pam Gregory and I talked about a bit. So I refer you to that. And I also had a video with Martha Hines of Living the One Light. And we talked about the KBOs again and the level of consciousness. So it's been a KBO week and we're still in it as far as I'm concerned, because this new moon does have a lot of dynamic KBO activity. And I know, some people are very hesitant about it, but, just listen in and see if something grabs your attention, because we're going to look at some that haven't talked about too much. And, when they come up, they come up. So anyway.
I think that's really important. I also just want to share with maybe some people who've not seen the video with Pam, that Kelley shares a really nice slide that she actually shared with us during the Return of the Goddess immersion when we were talking about some of the goddess planets, to help us try and understand a bit more about where the asteroids, the centaurs, the KBOs, and even Sedna, which is way out, actually fit into the scheme of thing. And I think by doing that, Kelley, what you're doing is showing people, like you said, stepping stones, like the asteroids and the centaurs, or the stepping stones from Mars to Jupiter, which is actually quite a big gap, planetarily speaking. But now that we're understanding that the asteroids are maybe part of an exploded planet, maybe Tiamat, which maybe harnessed the energy of the goddess in our universe in times gone by, we're understanding why so many asteroids or centaurs have goddess energy. But now with the KBOs, we're going even further out. We're going beyond Pluto. And you said something really profound, I think, if I got the phrase correctly, is that Pluto was almost like the gateway to the KBOs, because it's sitting in the same space, right? Basically,
it is a KBO.
Right.
Even when they discovered it in 1930, it was a completely different thing, small and rocky, than the gas giants that preceded it. So when they found more of these things, that's why they wanted to reclassify Pluto. And, Pluto doesn't care, but it is the like the underworld gateway into the creator gods that became the category for most of these Kuiper Belt objects, once they realized that they were going to be discovering a lot of them.
Right. And what I think is really interesting is I have to give some credit here to my magic teacher, David Leasley, a wonderful magician from the Isle of Man, who really encouraged me and my fellow students at the time who were learning about magic to embrace our mythological selves. And really, when we go into our DNA coding and we start to interact with the dragon elemental part of ourselves, the angelic part of ourselves, the Pegasus messenger part of ourselves, the magician serpent healer part of ourselves, the Christ consciousness part of ourselves, what we're actually doing is remembering the mythological parts of ourselves, which is really our sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 dimensional self. And I really believe that the Kuiper Belt objects are the nuances of our sort of higher dimensional selves, our mythological selves, that we can now start to bring to bear on the more 3D aspect of ourselves, which can be understood through our traditional astrology. So I think it's super exciting, and I love the way that you show that diagram. So for those people who've not watched that, definitely recommend watching the interview that Pam and Kelley did just recently. That'll sit very well, I think, alongside today's show. So
yeah,
really loved it.
Yeah, putting some good ones out on my Substack. starlady.substack.com. I have, I'm putting the videos up, including ours, Davyd, for people to easily watch. And I have a lot more graphics and some audio material on there. And what used to be my newsletter is on there now. It's still my newsletter, and it comes out if you sign up to your email. But anyway, you can see a lot more of the history of my work on there and tap into something that grabs you. And I'm going to be sharing today some of that. So anyway, it's also I want to mention in regard to the meaning of the KBOs that I consider them connected to the etheric level, the fifth element out of which all the four other elements emerge. And, the physical and non-physical aspects of ether are the liminal space in which what imagination or vision can be pulled into 3D reality and materiality. So that's why they're so exciting. They give us that opportunity to engage with the creative aspect on a visionary level and with, intention to bring it in to our lives.
Well, just before you pull up the screen for the new moon, something you just said just triggered me, which is very interesting. Which, if we consider that humanity is evolving to the point where we're dealing with our emotional traumas, okay, this is, I think, a really interesting concept, then we can understand that the lower astrals, the human emotional pain realm, are no longer going to exist because they simply cannot. Because as Pam's talked about and as we've talked about, those frequencies cannot exist in the higher dimensional frequencies.
Yeah.
So, through working with the archetype of Great Mother Spider, we can understand that as the anti-grid has fallen and the great natural web is being restored, the anti-grid actually has human emotional pain trauma trapped in it. So if we've done our inner work and we've freed ourselves from that and become sovereign beings, there literally is no need for the lower astrals to exist anymore. And I think that as that happens, a lot of the old astrology that we've been using to navigate the human emotional trauma pain worlds isn't going to be necessary anymore. And perhaps that's why the KBOs and these other higher astral or even 5D energies coming from the etheric realms are coming in, because that is where we're expanding towards. And so the lower astral phenomena of the last couple of millennia isn't going to exist anymore. So maybe these are literally stepping stones that you're offering us or we're being offered through the KBOs to this higher level of consciousness, which I think is super exciting and leading us to our creator God 10th hierarchy archetypal selves. We are God beings, right, living in a human body. We have the power to create. So anyway, just wanted to share that. So bring up the chart for the new moon, Kelley, and we can perhaps show people in a more visual way what it is that we're feeling so excited about today, because clearly we are both feeling the energies are with us in this Scorpio season. We have navigated somewhat the eclipses the last couple of weeks, but they're going to be with us up until
eclipses open up energy that ripples out. So it's not just a one-time experience. So it's certainly rippling through this new moon in Scorpio. And there we see, this is the typical chart one brings up, right? So here's the sun and moon conjunct at 20 degrees, 43 minutes Scorpio, Mars right there. Mars rules Scorpio. So it's like right there. Mm-hmm. So right away, we have a very strong extra Scorpio intensity that is at work here. And, we think of Mars as the warrior god, but it's not just that. It's energy, it's activation. And here's something really beautiful I found somewhere online, and I don't know who wrote this, but it's about the warrior. And here's what it says. And I like this because somehow the Mars and the sun are traveling together even into the full moon when they're both in Sagittarius. So we're going to have this whole moon cycle is colored by Mars in Scorpio and Sagittarius. So a warrior is the protector of his family and those in need, A warrior is the guardian of the ways of honor and courage. A warrior will not put his own desires above what is right. Above all, a warrior is always motivated by his utmost duty. Now, of course, they're female warriors, and we've got one very active, the sister of Mars, Eris, which we'll be looking at a little today, is conjunct the North Node. So we are working with the feminine warrior energy too, which is in many different mythologies. But there is Eris standing in her clarity, her strength, her integrity, right on the North Node, saying, people, this is the way to go, follow me. And she's like our true north, in our path right now. And then we've got all kinds of other mythic warriors. There's Durga in Hindu mythology, and the Celtic Maka, is that how you pronounce it? Athena, Oya of the Aruba people, they're all warrior goddesses. So we have a lot of warrior energy, in our this particular moon cycle, but lately.
So let's just unpack that for a second, because I've been contemplating this actually this week, being so Scorpionic myself, having Mars in Scorpio also, and feeling a lot of this Mars-Mercury energy going over my stellium this week. I've been somewhat underwhelmed, I would say, by the lack of Mars energy that I've been experiencing. Normally Mars is an energy that's strong with me all the time. But I have to say over the last week, it's almost like there was an absence of what I expected to be the Mars energy. So first of all, that's the first point I'd like to put you. And secondly, is that we can see that in the world, we are being presented with narratives that seem to involve war. But can we make a distinction between them and what we're talking about as warriors? Because otherwise what we can do is mash up the two together and say that, oh, what we're looking at is a situation of warriors on the planet, which I wouldn't necessarily agree with. So I just want to throw out those two breadcrumbs and get your feedback in relation to this.
Well, that's why I read this piece, because it isn't the violent, warrior with weapons to go fight. It's a different kind of warrior. So there are many, it's like there's the higher version and the lower version, right? So yeah, we've got the whole realm, the whole range of warrior, kind of going on. So and it's not to be expected, Davyd. With Uranus in Taurus, especially opposite this new moon and Mars, it's not going to happen as expected. The energy is not going to play out as expected. Uranus is just absolutely, kind of awakening our perspective beyond our experience of the past and any projections we have of what this all means.
Okay, that's actually really interesting. But could we also say that the dampening effect of the earthy Taurus, with Uranus being in Taurus opposing the moon and Mars, would that also dampen down somewhat the chi levels? That's kind of what I've been feeling. Normally for me, Mars is very chi, kind of lots of intensity, and that hasn't been there. Actually, what's been kind of startling is the sort of the more opposite of that, calm, okay, stay centered, not feel activated to go and do something. Quite the opposite, feel activated on a much calmer sense to be still and say, actually, what I need now is to put that energy inwards. So I'm wondering whether we're seeing a little softening of that energy with Uranus and Taurus.
Well, I'm not sure Uranus softens things, but
that's what I think.
The Jupiter in Taurus might. Because
okay.
the wisdom of Jupiter would say, just calm down. And they're both retrograde. So it's just calm down, stay grounded and see what's going on. I've definitely felt a very strong energy level myself. But it's also, a lot of it's going inward. A lot of it is like, we change from the inside out. And so Scorpio has that, it's all out there or it's all in there. It has these extremes that it goes through, which is passionate intensity and then deep, renewal and processing. So it's an all or nothing sign, and it can go, to both of those extremes. And then, we have to find some level of balance with the South Node there in Libra to help us just balance out and maybe choose how do we want to be expressing and playing out that energy in our lives. And, it's also exposing us to ourselves, because there's Scorpio and Pluto is still in a T square with the nodes. So it's going to evoke the shadow energy that, like you were saying earlier on, we have to contend with our stuff before we can move on and really engage the higher dimensional energies or the creative dynamics of the Kuiper Belt objects or whatever.
Right, that's super interesting. And I just want to bring in another thing, which probably you'll be able to expand on, which is as we move through the month or through a zodiac sign, each zodiac sign is 30 degrees. And so it can be split into the first 10 degrees, the second 10 degrees, and the third 10 degrees, right? I think there's a name for that that's escaping me right now.
That's the decanates.
Decanates, exactly. Thank you. So by the time we get to this new moon, we are into the second of those aspects in Scorpio. And if we think about Scorpio, yes, it kind of technically has 4 representations, but the 3 that are the most well known are the Scorpion, the Phoenix, and the Eagle. And so if we were to divide the month of the Scorpio sun sign into those 3 sections, we can say that we've been dealing in the first 10 days with the more Scorpion element, the critter, the 3D, I need to protect myself. But we're now moving in with this new moon energy. We're moving into the Phoenix rising aspect of the Scorpio in this month, which is death and rebirth. So that the final 10 days, I guess, from the new moon onwards, heading towards the full moon in Sag, the early signs of the Sag, are more about the eagle's perch 5D perspective that the ascended Scorpio energy has. So I just wanted to bring that in because I love working with that aspect of myself because I am Scorpio, but also to share it because it does feel like this new moon is Phoenix rising time. We've had these powerful eclipses. We've been forced to go inwards, forced to slow down, to open ourselves to the universe. Yes, the full moon was eclipsed, but it's going to pop out sooner or later. But this new moon in Scorpio is a powerful seed setting time. And I think we're being invited to use that.
Oh, yes. With Uranus, this is like it's shaking the earth, you know, and it's the earth is expressing herself in powerful ways that we must listen to. And so there's so much happening like on the ground, you know, that is changing. So, you know, it's kind of like there's unhealed history breaking out all over the world and also being remembered at some level. You know, the different levels of memory, of repeating the past or not repeating the past, all of that. But Uranus opposite this new moon is definitely an indicator of such change in this moon cycle that we're all going to be really surprised. And it feels kind of like there's so many aspects coming to crescendo, you know, and it's going to blow, you know, kind of thing. But what does that mean? And what does that look like? And how are we containing and directing intentionally with the willpower of Scorpio? Scorpio has a strong will, especially when Mars is there. You know, it can be a thing where I want what I want and I'm going for it. And it can also be strong energy coming through. Let me wield that power well. And, you know, I always think of the will being, you know, that prayer, let thy will be done. You know, there's a level of surrender that Scorpio can best serve by surrendering to that higher power and not the what can be very destructive you know, selfishness that, you know, we're all contending with our ego selves, even when we're becoming our higher selves, you know, translating the small s self to the capital S self.
Right. And of course, Scorpio on the lower note can often be about control or power. And, you know, if we're still trying to perhaps control too many aspects of our own life, I feel that the death and rebirth process with Scorpio is often forcing us to see where we can let go of more control. You know, we've been joking a lot recently about being in the flow, trying to be very dandelion, being very in the moment. But the Scorpio part of me going, hey, but what's the backup plan? That's the sneaky side of Scorpio that always wants a backup plan. Even when you fully believe that you're in the flow, in the moment, there's still a backup plan in case that plan doesn't work out. And I've got that little guy, that sneaky Scorpio side of me, once or twice recently going, hey, there needs to be a backup in case that doesn't work out. And it's like, that's not being in the flow. That's still trying to control things, right? So I just want to share that from a humorous point of view, because that is a an aspect of Scorpio that can often blindside us, where we are trying to control things and not being in a place of trust, right?
Yes, yes. Well, that trust is a Scorpio issue for sure. And we have, generations now that have Neptune in Scorpio and Pluto in Scorpio. And so this new moon is very powerful for those two specific groups. So and I think of it this way. Scorpio is the subatomic field where the energy is. I forget if I've shared this before, but worth repeating. So it's the subatomic field where the energies are, when they line up in a special way, matter happens, and that's Taurus. So, but this is so changeable. And the eclipses, it's suggesting we can change our material result by going down there and letting go of some of the stuff that's coming up. And this has been such a deep processing for everybody in some way. And it has physical implications. Our bodies are responding to all the energy coming in, and there's certain blocks or there's certain signals that are coming up from our bodies. So we really need, that's where a lot of the wisdom is. And that's in this deep place in ourselves that I'm learning about, is called the womb chakra. Mm-hmm. And I think some of what you were saying earlier on, and I forget exactly, but you were reminding me of that power place. And it's where our soul spark, kind of lives in us through all of our incarnations. And there's a lot of unhealed toxicity there, the pain body. And this needs to be healed. And there are a lot of techniques coming up for that. But I think this has been changing my interpretation or sense of what Black Moon is about. That it is perhaps that womb chakra energy that has that soul wisdom deep, 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 that wants to come forth and be expressed and reach the divine. So anyway, that's
well,
here we see. Look at this. This is the true Black Moon. Squaring this closely, squaring Uranus to the degree, and squaring the new moon within a degree. So the Black Moon has a lot to say here. So it's in Leo. This is the true Black Moon, which goes back and forth a lot. The mean Black Moon has already moved into Virgo. But this one is still playing around with the Leo expression and helping kind of bust the ego if it starts taking charge.
Well, look, you just a couple of things there before I forget. I just want to look back to what you were saying about Mars and Uranus, because really Scorpio is the sign of alchemy. And when we're thinking about the womb space, as you've been talking a lot about recently, and I think we're very importantly, is we're talking about the alchemization of etheric energy through the womb chakra into 3D manifestation. So when I see Mars in Scorpio opposing Uranus in Taurus, what I'm seeing is alchemy. I'm seeing the alchemy of Scorpio from the etheric realms down through the womb space into Taurus, which is probably one of the most earthy, grounded 3D signs of all. And it's making me think that is the process that we are in. We are holding, as we were talking about off camera, the wonderful idea of quantum financial systems, quantum ways of being, even maybe the dissolution of some of the astral planes to do with the lower emotions, etc. This is alchemy that we're talking about. It's showing that the collective has alchemized the lower frequencies through these processes, through the womb, through the etheric womb, into something that now can be considered a 3D new earth. So I was just thinking that maybe that Black Moon Lilith is sat sort of presiding over that alchemical process. And, with Scorpio and Taurus, we have that kind of axis of energy and alchemy available. And what better than Mars and Uranus? I mean, those are two very potent planets for that process. Lots of energy and lots of magic, right?
Yes, absolutely. Pretty volatile on one level. But there's such stirring up, it's like to the heart of chaos we go. And bring forward what the new paradigm wants to unfold. And this is really because of the Scorpio Taurus dynamic. It's really a continuation of the last moon cycle we had in the eclipses. So the nodes are in Libra and Aries, but we've had this leftover stuff, kind of going on here to deepen our capacity for this alchemy and for, again, directing the outcome we most want to experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really important vision to be holding. And when we get to the full moon and see the Sagittarius, visionary aspect, then I think this full moon's a lot about that. Shall we look?
Yeah, Joey, I want to finish on the Black Moon Lilith because it's really caught my attention. It's at 21 degrees of, what is that? Sorry, Cancer? So 21
Leo. Leo.
Sorry, Leo. So it's sat directly with squares on both Uranus and Mars. Is that right? Have I read the chart?
Yes, and the new moon.
And the new moon, of course. So we can say that really and truly, a bit like Pluto and squaring the nodes, that almost on the opposite side of the wheel, we have Black Moon Lilith squaring Uranus and Mars and the moon on this new moon. So it does make me feel like she is the referee, the adjudicator, the administrator of this particular process, which would make total sense. She is the perfect being or perfect, let's say, archetypal energy to assist in that wound-like alchemical process that is going to be necessary now for us to transform the old paradigm.
Energy, essence. The essence is love. That of a life is love. So yes, absolutely. And there's an interesting KBO that we're going to find. So let's go on to the next slide, and everybody get ready because this is KBO heavy.
I'm holding on tight.
Okay, wait a minute. It's not going. Oh, there we go.
Oh, okay.
All right. So here we are.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So some of these are familiar to our audience, right, Kelley? We have met Orcus before, and we've met Tyrone Wako and Vada, but there's a few sort of new characters appearing here that I know you talked a little bit about with Pam, but where are you going to drop us into this ocean of KBO inquiry?
Well, let's remember again that the true Black Moon was at 21 of Leo. Here we see the mean Black Moon at 4 of Virgo. But let's go back and see that there's something very close to where the true Black Moon is at 21 that could also be said to be squaring this moon. But I'm drawing a triangle here that involves Promiscuous. So Pam and I did talk about this quite a bit, so I'm referring people back to that again. It's a Lithuanian god of the sky and of peace and friendship. And very old rituals that this area of the world, Lithuania, it's from Lithuania, that they follow. So there's some very deep tradition here, and it's bringing out the quality of, there was one of the astronomers that discovered this particular one was Lithuanian. Right. So, he knew his mythology. I have not seen any other reference to peace and friendship with Promiscuous except through my own experience. So anyway, there's Promiscuous in Leo. Now, this is a leadership sign and the leading from the heart energy. And then it's in a trine with the North Node and Eris, which is that standing clear and centered in ourselves. And then also with particularly Varda. I believe we've talked about Varda before, the goddess of the stars, the star lady from Tolkien's mythology, who created the stars in the sky and brought light into the world. Every time there was a new era and there was destruction, she would bring in a new light. And so here she is, aligned with the galactic center at 26 Sagittarius, and bringing in that energy from the galactic center, the heart of the Milky Way galaxy, and bringing in immense potential for the new light, the new vision, the new, we're more aligned with the galactic center since 2012. And that was one of the main things that the winter solstice is now rising in front of the galactic center more closely than it's ever, in quite a number of thousands of years. And so this energy from the galactic center is coming in more clearly, and Varda is bringing it in, bringing that light in. This is very profound.
It is really profound, and I love that. You know, that whole aspect of Varda coming through on the galactic center is actually conjunct my midheaven, which is conjunct the galactic center. So it's kind of for me very personal, but I think it's also very symbolic and symptomatic of the piece that we're now at. Is like, you know, we myself and Bella were making a video to put out on our own channel about where we feel that we're at, and we were sharing that like the job is done, everybody. The old network has been taken down. The only thing that we have to do now is step out onto the new planes, the clear, we can say the clear planes, they're almost like a blank board, and start drawing new Earth. But it's such a phenomenon that we're not really used to, that we're still sort of like, is it real? But when we see that Varda is bringing that light from the galactic center into our realm and combining with these other energies, it's like, well, you know, we're also, I think you've conjuncted it, you've aspected it with the North Node. So that's our collective future.
Look how close. 25, right? 6 to 24, and then Promjus at 26, and this is a cosmic god, one of the original, you know, gods in that mythology, the original creator gods, and has a lot to do with destiny as well. So you know, I'm still being very careful about how to interpret these energies, so I'm not making things up. You know? So
and that's part of this work, isn't it? It's intuitive, Kelley. You know, you're being very pragmatic, but also allowing yourself to open, as indeed those of us interested in these new stepping stone astrological objects in the sky. But at the same time, we can allow ourselves to feel what they're offering. And I think that beautiful triangle that you've got there with the North Node and Varda and Prime Zeus speaks to me of the energy that I've been experiencing energetically for the last week, or maybe even a couple of weeks, really, which is like the job's done. Take a chill pill and sit back and, you know, enjoy the scenery, enjoy what's going on. Don't feel the energies of the past. They're going to burden us.
Don't look out there, look in here. And that's where the joy is bubbling up. You know, if we look back to December of 2020, there was that solstice day when Jupiter and Saturn got together. It was so close, they looked like a special star in the sky. And a week before that, there was a total solar eclipse at 23 Sagittarius, and Varda was at 23 Sagittarius. So that she came right in on that eclipse, and she's with the galactic center. So this is really, really powerful energy. And just to note that's my Mercury degree, 23, 24. So, you know, I had to start talking about her, right?
So your Mercury is at 23, 24 of Sagittarius?
Yeah, I think it's actually 24, 25. It's 24 degrees, 25 minutes, something like that. But it's close enough for sure, you know.
I think maybe we just discovered the keys to how this show came about. So your Mercury is conjunct my midheaven on the galactic center. Okay, that might actually result in a YouTube video, I think. So anyway, this is how we get to learn about ourselves, right? We can see that we are living our astrology.
Yes, and that's it. And we're living our myth. We're living our mythology, as you were mentioning before. It's in our DNA.
It's literally encoded into us, and our astrology is the way to unlock that. But as beautiful as that green triangle is, there's also a red square you put there.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Some old adversaries, Mr. Orcus up there, sat on my descendant, is definitely about ending contract.
Okay, hold on a second. Let's start with the one that's connecting the triangle to the square. And that's one I haven't worked with a whole lot. So when I realized how active it was, and it came up in the news. So here's the thing. This is Huya. I
like it already. It sounds like whoa.
Huya. So Huya is from South America. And this body was discovered at a observatory in Colombia or Venezuela. Nice. So Huya, and I wrote about this quite a bit in my piece, my Cosmic Inspiration News for the new moon a couple of times ago, because Huya is from the Wayu people. the WAY, wherever the apostrophe is, it's like apostrophe UU. So the Wayuu people live on a very dry peninsula that sticks out into the North Caribbean coast of South America, where there's a border between Colombia and Venezuela. And so those two countries share that peninsula. And there's a river that comes through, which I think is the Huya River. But anyway, don't quote me on that. I'm still trying to get some of the factoids clear about these things. So, but there was a piece in a magazine that came up about water light, where they made they invented a kind of, it almost looks like a lantern, but they use water light to make light. That this happened with the Wayuu people. That was where they discovered this thing. An invention that was inspired by the Wayuu people from the Guajira Peninsula on the North Caribbean coast of South America. And so Huya is one of their gods, one of their creator gods. And so this is a beautiful thing, because Huya is like the rain god who brings needed water to this dry tropical region, and is brought up in the news because of the people whose god this is just invented this water light, with the salt water being able to electrify and give these people needed light at night. So really a beautiful, so I had to look up Huya again, and I'm sharing this with you because it's active in this Grand Cross for a while. This Grand Cross is in activation for a while. So the big story about Huya is, one thing is he had two wives. One was Pulawi of the land, and then also Pulawi of the sea, and they're both fierce nature goddesses, and they had a little jealousy thing going on there. But the big story is about the Howler Monkey King, who owned the lightning that would announce and bring the rain, and he held on to that for himself. He wasn't going to share it. And he actually used the lightning to burn up his neighbor's crops. So he was hoarding all of the rain clouds. Every other place was having drought. And a plan was developed by the community to invite Howler Monkey to a party and get him drunk on their local chicha, a fermented beverage. So this was the whole community.
Chicha before. I know about those chicha parties down in the jungle. You have to be careful.
So indeed. So they made lots and lots of it. And, there's Huya's trying to drink down Howler Monkey King. And so finally, this took a lot of chicha. The Howler Monkey King passed out, and Huya was able to pry open Monkey King's fist and steal his thunder, steal the lightning bolts, to return the rains and fertility to their land.
Well, I think that's a very interesting story on a number of levels, and we could decode it in many ways right now. But at a time when, and I'm going to make sure we don't get into trouble on this one, at a time when the weather is behaving in ways that are perhaps not what we would expect, we could suggest that there is a Howler Monkey King somewhere doing something similar on the planet. We're not going to name names, but we could suggest that maybe that it's not in the hands of the nature beings as it should be, and that there is some sort of manipulation of, and we were just talking about this, right, Kelley, before we jumped on the record. I'm down here in Texas, and I was saying and sharing that this place is desperately in need of water. The water has somehow been disappeared from here. And I'm not the only person that said that. Even when we first arrived here a couple of weeks ago, it was 108 degrees. It was so hot outside. It was the day of the EAS, weirdly enough, and it was so hot that day you couldn't breathe outside. That evening, the waters came and the temperature dropped by, I don't know, 20, 30 Fahrenheit.
Say what the EAS is. Davyd?
The emergency alert system.
Oh, right, that.
It was
Okay.
the same day. The heat was absolutely through the roof. And people in this area were saying that even long-time Texans who are used to this heat have already left and they've gone to nearby states because the heat's been that unbearable this year. And that's been going on for years and years. And, I lived in the Middle East in the desert, so I know what high heat feels like. But if you're not used to that, it can be very, very oppressive, particularly if you feel like it's not natural. And
yes. And I hadn't picked up that part of the Monkey King myth. So I'm so glad we're talking about this.
That's just one interpretation. I love what you talked about with the salt and the light, all of that. But that's what I love about these KBOs is you can tell a story, and one person is going to hear one part of the story, somebody else is going to hear a different part. You start to build the archetype of the energy.
And there's certain themes, like Huya reminded me of Salacia, the saltwater mermaid.
Right.
So there are certain themes, and that's great because we want to see those themes, kind of come together in global mythologies. So we know they're universal. So that's Huya, and I wanted to mention Huya first, But yes, you said Orcus. So here's Orcus. Now this is another one of the underworld gods with almost the same orbital length as Pluto. And Orcus was an Etruscan god who punished those who did not keep their oaths. So I might have told this story. I don't know if I told it on our M&Ms, but that I wasn't paying attention to Orcus much either. And then they come to your attention. And this time it was from, I was doing a reading for someone who had Orcus exactly conjunct her sun. And so I had to mention it. And she said, oh, how interesting. What I do is help people break their agreements, break their oaths that are no longer appropriate or holding them back. So that opened up.
Is she a marriage counselor or something, or what?
Well, her son was in the 7th house, but I don't think it was a marriage thing. I think it was this. A lot of soul work is being done, right, with breaking agreements that we don't even know we've made in some ways, or we're holding them over from our ancestry or past lives. We need to deal with this stuff in order to be able to move on. So we need to be aware of these agreements and be able to break them and do whatever forgiveness or evening out of, karma stuff needs to happen, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Orcus before. I think it was one of the first KBOs we connected through, actually, Kelley, right back when we first started doing M&M, and it sort of disappeared off the radar a little bit. I got super interested in Orcus, went out and did a lot of research, and I have Orcus quite prominently in my own natal chart, and so I was very curious about this particular energy. But I think it's a really important one right now, and I'm saying that because it's Saturn, my descendant, but I'm also feeling that this is a time where the karma of the old world is over. I keep likening it to taking a piece of paper and scrunching it into a ball and saying, well, if the original A4 was the old paradigm and we've just scrunched it into a 0 point.
Thrown it into the fire.
Well, okay, that would ruin the analogy, but you could throw it into the fire. But what I was going to say was that when you let go of the paper, it's like those new fandangled currency notes. It pops back out, but that's the new spiral expanding back out. But we had to sort of scrunch in to a 0 point, including 0 point of karma, because we've talked about this before. In the 5th dimension, karma doesn't actually exist. It doesn't exist.
Wait, are you talking about karma, Karma?
Yeah, karma, as in.
Okay, because there's another word, kama, which is Kama, which means desire.
Well, well, maybe that's also relevant, but no, I was referring more to the karmic contracts that we carry forth, the oaths that we've made, the vows that we've made. Orcus isn't solely about karma, I don't think, but I think it's showing us the places where we maybe do have unresolved contracts at a soul level, maybe in 3D. And if we have those unresolved contracts that are still anchoring us into an old paradigm, they're not going to serve us. They're going to be like having literally an anchor for a boat that's going to stop you from moving. So we need to sort of wind those anchors up, have a good look at the contract and say, okay, is that done? Great. Then we can set sail. Or maybe the anchor has to go back down again, do a little bit of work, and then we pull it up. I don't know, but I think that Orcus is a very, very important energy to be dealing with at this time, because we have to make sure.
It's coming up in people's charts quite a lot.
I can imagine.
And if it's in Virgo, like, how does that then connect with the Earth energy?
Right.
And our promises to Earth or our bodies, or, you know, something along that line. And, you know, I really do think that, you know, these first few KBOs that are kind of close to Pluto and named for other underworld gods, you know, this again, we've got to go through this world and deal with the shadows, deal with these unresolved things, and open it up, free them up, heal, do the alchemy. So there's, yeah, Orcus in Virgo there. And the black moon, the mean black moon, is coming along. They're going to join up at some point, which I think I could actually figure it out. So
you've created a square here with these energies, but also, and again, because it's super prominent in my chart, but Orcus is actually opposing Tyrone Wako on the opposite side. It's in a square, but it's also in an opposition, as indeed are Algira and Vada and Huya.
Yes.
So we can read these in slightly different ways, right?
Have we talked about Tyrone Wako much?
Not today, so please enlighten us a bit more.
Okay. So Tyrone Wako is from the Iroquois people. And most of what I've been learning, and I'm still reading this book, is from this book called The Rotin-Shawnee.
That's right. You shared that before. Thank you.
Yes.
I'll have to put the link in the notes for that, I think.
A traditional Iroquoian history through the eyes of Tyrone Wako and Sawiskara, his evil brother. So it brings up the whole, our life experience of the, you know, of good and evil. And Tyrone Wako is incredibly kind and compassionate when his brother's trying to make trouble. He just says, okay, I don't want to be too close to this guy, but, you know, so there's something about that dynamic and that relationship going on that's so human. And then Tyrone Wako, you know, is how the people's, the whole Iroquois nation, people is made up of 6 nations, and they were to keep peace with each other. And they did at one point start warring. And there was this being that was born and came in called the peacemaker, who walked through the lands and talked to all the people to bring back harmony among the Iroquois nations. So there's a beautiful themes with Tyrone Wako. And he was the creator god who put the sun and moon in the sky. The moon was his mother's head, and the sun was his great uncle. So there's a lot of history, because Tyrone Wako was born of a woman who was thrown down through a hole in the sky from the last world, the world before this one. So he had there were all of these things that were thrown down that became, you know, archetypes that Tyrone Wako could see. And then he'd bring them into the world. He'd manifest them in the world. So he was the creator of this world, basically.
So if I remember correctly, his brother with the very beautiful name of Sawiskara, I think it is, if I got that correct. I love that name. He's the guy that would bring through the less appealing objects, like the stony, thorny bushes and that kind of stuff. And somehow they would be repurposed. Is that correct? Have I got that right?
Well, because Tyrone Wako had like the breath of the divine, he could create these things, but Sawiskara did not have that.
He had like the early morning breath of the divine or something. Is that?
His symbol was a knife of ice.
Ouch.
And so he didn't have the power to create from the divine breath of life that Tyrone Wako had. So he would try to create something and he would make a mess of it. So, you know, so he'd make the thorny things. Not to say thorny things are bad, because Tyrone Wako would come around and say, oh, well, we could use that. I'm sure there's a use for the bat. I'm sure the flies could do something, you know. So very compassionate and kind. But, you know, Tyrone and Sawiskara he just couldn't create with, you know, just, you know, copy. He would try to copy. And that's the whole thing about the negative power. There's no creativity.
Right. I mean, there's so many things I think that are really interesting, which we'll try and bring into this square on the new moon before we move to the full moon. But I'm sensing that really Tyrone Wako is the repurposer of alternative ideas that maybe lack the divine light. So we could in some ways liken this perhaps to the human ability to create and the artificial intelligence ability to create. And it could be that we are being offered, isn't it, right? We could be offered the opportunity in the future not to see the artificial intelligence as an enemy, but as an ally. And maybe it doesn't have the divine will running through it naturally. Maybe in the future it will. And I'm very, very neutral about all of this. I'm not a particularly pro-AI person or anything, but I'm trying to find within myself a way to be able to accept within creators' vision how artificial intelligence may work for humans in the future. Maybe it needs to be repurposed by an energy like Tyrone Wako so that artificial intelligence actually becomes something that works for us, rather than perhaps is being used or manipulated by other forces that are using it against us. And I think that that's something that we can use in many narratives that are on the goggle box right now, is that maybe we're not against this thing, that person, that country, but maybe there is an energy that's manipulating that, which is creating division. So I feel like Tyrone Wako is...
Yeah,
exactly. And so rather than divide us and saying it's this nation against that nation, this being against that being, we can say, well, maybe there's another energy or frequency that is not completely of the divine order. We could say it needs a peacemaker to get through all of the mumble jumble of magic and illusion and say, okay, well, thank you very much for offering us that part of duality. We no longer need you in that purpose. So we're going to repurpose your energy for a higher frequency. And we can use that motif for anything.
And, getting back to the natural cosmic order.
Right, exactly. And so we can understand this in many ways, but I just wanted to bring that in because as you were saying it, the repurposing is like, wow, that feels a bit like something we might have to do with some of our technology soon before it tries to repurpose us, which would be a great outcome, right? But it's opposing Orcus, which is about old contracts, vows, and I'm like, that's interesting. Maybe this is a real tension point here between the old and the new and how we view things, maybe part of the contracts we have to leave behind.
Well, if there is unhealed history breaking out all over the world from traumas from the past, so some of these are collective agreements. I mean, we could be looking at technology that brought down Atlantis. We could be.
You must have read my mind. I was thinking the same thing.
I think you mentioned something before we started recording about that.
Well, that's the point we're at right now. If we're understanding that the scrunching of the paper is the condensing of the timelines into a 0 point, then all karma that needs to be resolved, which is where I see Orcus, including Atlantis, which is about the misuse of technology. It doesn't take really a genius to see that we're at the same point again. And it's like we're at a turning point where the technology could work against us or be used to work against us, or we can say thank you very much and perhaps be in a more Star Trek kind of world where artificial intelligence is specifically part of us and it responds intuitively to each and every one of us. It's part of our own technology. Because we could also say, like somebody said, that that we are like the artificial intelligence of nature because we're the minerals. I think it was Matthias de Stefano that said that. So I think that we have to be very loose in how we think about technology. And I for sure do not really enjoy all of the time spent at the heat emitting computers, but I am very aware that if I don't get to talk to you. I don't get to.
We are, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we mustn't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
That even though we're not in the same room, we're starting to be able to communicate at deeper levels than maybe originally we could on a platform like Zoom. We get a feel of it, but we still can't say this is the ultimate. But
no, I mean, we're not saying that, right? We're just trying to make a bridge here. And I think that's how we started Moons and Mythos, was through having a connection on Zoom, but also being able to feel the energies that we were both channeling in the shows that we do. So, I think this is really, really exciting. And I think that, yes, maybe the energies of Orcus and Sawiska are a little challenging, but it's out of challenges and adversity that we grow. And I think that this is an amazing time to really flip many things and say, thank you for the teachings that you've given us. Now, what have I learned from you in my adversity with you? So, I don't know, talk us through the last piece in Algier. I know this is one you don't know so much, but you've included it here.
So to make a bridge, in the book I brought up, the Rautin and Shani, that there are this man who wrote it. He walked a lot of the land with an elder who was telling the stories, almost like the song lines of the Aboriginals, that the land holds that history, the land holds that memory. Mm-hmm. So Algira is an Aboriginal creator god, and this is one I feel really unqualified to talk about because I'm becoming ever more sensitive, that these are gods, specific creator gods, like that's high up gods of certain people, and that we need to take into account that. I was on an astronomy class with, it was called Astronomy of the Haudenosaunee, which is, part of the Iroquois people. And the teacher was helping us understand like how their people saw the sky and which constellations and all of that. And mentioned Tyrone Wako as their creator god, and so I raised my hand and I said, there's a new body in the far solar system that's named Tyrone Wako. And he said, they didn't ask us.
You shared this before, yeah.
Yeah, so that, again, that's where I'm being careful about how much I can even think I understand about Algira. And, a lot of the imagery I used in my coloring book, and I got some images I could share. Let's see if I can find them. Yeah, so here are some of the images from my coloring book that go with. So you see, here's Tyrone Wako. He also, planted the first things. And there's this evil brother, getting ready to kill him or something, because I think he did. I haven't gotten to the end of that story yet. Here's Algira, kind of taking from some of the cave paintings, the art of the Aboriginals. And it is said that Algira took on emu feet to be able to stay on the ground while he was creating after coming down from the big dreaming. Mm-hmm. And then he went back to the big dreaming and let the ancestors take over. So that's about all I know. Only there is a second object, like with Tyrone Wako. Tyrone Wako has a companion body and they orbit together. So the astronomer who was naming, they wanted to find one with two characters. And the same with Algira, has Algira 1 and Algira 2. There are two Algiras that are also like it's a binary, body.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's really important, first of all, that you share that, Kelley, and, in the interest of reducing the colonialism or appropriation of other people's cultures in the modern world, I think it's important that we can pay respect to the other cultures that have provided us with these creator gods, because what I'm really understanding as we move into a more fifth dimensional consciousness as a collective is that we are going to be the creator gods of a new earth. And we need to make sure that we've learned the lessons of being the students of the original creator gods in the past. And, all of these wonderful indigenous cultures, and we have them all across the planet, from the Aboriginals to the tribes of South America, to the Celtic people, to the Norse people, to the First Nations people of the Northern Americas. Every culture has its own creator gods. And, they often actually, when you look at them across cultures, have very similar themes and energies. But, the KBOs, I think, are starting to offer us the potentiality to think like creator gods. Are we just beings? Do we see the potentiality in everything? Can we repurpose even thorny bushes and flies into something useful without passing judgment on the creator of those who perhaps doesn't have the same abilities as us? This is all the mind of creator gods. And I think that, if we are to step up to being creator gods as humans, we need to make sure that we're in a place of maturity and responsibility, right? So,
and a healing, we come with a healing of the heart and a healing of the womb chakra, or whatever we want to call that, soul, the connection of heart and soul. And that it's not all about the mind. That's where a lot of the artificial stuff comes up, because there are these ideas and they're not nature, it's not the sacred geometry of nature that is more of a heart-based, Venus, the geometry of Venus is all about the golden mean and sacred geometry. And so we need to be more in tune with that and align our bodies to that as well. And that's with the help of Uranus and Taurus. So the images speak louder than words sometimes. So there's Algira. A lot of the art, from a culture is also going to speak to their understanding, their cosmic understanding. This is Orcus. Orcus has a moon, Vanth, that invites you in and helps the soul down to the underworld. Here's Huya and Howler Monkey. And
Wow.
some more of the mythology, rainbow and the snake and all that. And there's Varda who's singing her breath into balls of ether, and then they light up as stars.
And this is a great chance to plug Kelley's asteroid or KBO coloring book, which these images have come from. And I think it's a really great way for us to learn, or even to encourage our children maybe to start learning about astrology by coloring, and because it brings you very much into the present moment with those energies. So love that. And of course, you can find that along with all of Kelley's books and other things on her website, which is heliostar.com, if I remember correctly, Kelley. Yeah. So I just clocked the time. We've spent quite a long time looking at the new moon because the energy is super powerful, but I feel like it's probably time to move on to the full moon and see how this may all play out in a couple of weeks' time. So what are the key takeaways here, Kelley?
Well, Sagittarius, Sun has moved into Sagittarius just a few days earlier. The full moon is in Gemini. Those are such, I love that. Well, I'm a Sag, so I find the polarity with Gemini so interesting. I have so many, especially women astrology friends who are Geminis. Sagittarius is the visionary. It sees the bigger picture. It sees the forest. And Gemini translates that vision, communicates that in some way, kind of brings it down into some kind of communicative, articulate level. So I love that. They're both storytellers or writers. Sagittarius has a very strong intuition, and Gemini is like right there, instant feedback, like a tennis player, like putting the ball across the net, it gets hit back. It's like sometimes Sagittarius is more in that bigger visionary aspect, but there's Gemini, telling it like it is. So information. So this is like a lot of information coming out. Sagittarius is the truth seeker and the truth speaker. So there's going to be a lot of information coming out and revealing of some of the things that have been going on behind the scenes in the Scorpio realm. And we see Mars right next to the sun still. And this is the adventure. This is like a very sporty sign. Sagittarius likes to keep moving. It's the adventure. It's like wild horses running across the open plains. Sagittarius is the country, and Gemini is more of like a city person. likes the 24/7 activity. So anyway, so that's something about that polarity of that full moon.
I'm also seeing that you're having a Mercury return, right? By the looks of things, if I've read that correctly.
Yeah, actually, almost exactly.
What can you tell us about a Mercury return, Kelley, out of interest, just because it's come up in the chart? How would, if anyone else is having a similar experience or has had Mercury passing over their own natal Mercury, what can happen for us at that time?
Well, it happens every year. So, and it's not going to be on the same day every year, like a solar return. But, Mercury can never be more than one sign away from your sun. Is that true?
I don't know whether that's true. It sounded complicated, but I was thinking like Mercury return is in the fact that it's going back to your natal position.
Right. Well, this is a good time for learning, I should put some time aside for writing, and, that sort of thing. So, it's like, it has so much to do with where is your Mercury, but mine is, right there in Sagittarius. So that's why I love myths. They're the universal stories of how we live, and why I am a writer, and why I am, a teacher. Now, Sagittarius teaching, it's like higher education. I have a lot of trouble with like elementary astrology. I would not teach beginning astrology. I'm just more for advanced, more advanced kind of thing. I tend to skip pieces of information. My mind intuitively jumps.
Yeah. It's being very a right brain. I have the same problem sometimes. It's writing. Speaking is fine. Writing I find a little more challenging. I often have to go back and fill in words that I've left out because my mind is operating on a different process. I bring up Mercury for a couple of reasons, because it's really prominent and it's also in aspect to Neptune, right?
Squaring Neptune. Varda, it's conjunct Varda. So it's bringing up that fantasy, that imagination, visionary imagination that Tolkien had to come up with, that kind of creation story with Varda and Manwe and the archangels creating Earth. And yes, and Neptune. So this can be a deluded mind. And so I'm speaking about my experience lately, that I've been really like dropping words, and I love making up new words. Yeah, I somebody spoke this one to me the other day, and sparkled and sparkling and sparkledness or something. And I really like that one. I
came up with one for my birthday, which was an eclipse anniversary. Because it was my birthday anniversary and an eclipse, so an eclipse anniversary. You know, we can have fun with this.
This is beautiful for spiritual teachings. Absolutely beautiful for creativity, for the use of that imagination, and to let that intuitive side of you really speak forth.
Right.
So that it has a beauty. Just give yourself enough rest, because your nervous system can be a little, you know. So I want to.
Sorry, go on, Kelly. Go on.
Oh, did you have another comment about that Mercury?
I do, yeah, because this is where I'm trying to educate myself. I see that it's also in some sort of aspect to the North Node. Now, is that a trine that is going across there to the North Node?
Yeah, a trine. So we had a trine, right, with Prime Zeus, and so Mercury's and conjunct Varda right in on that trine. Really beautiful. So these are natural, and it's a fire triangle. And I don't think we have the black moon there anymore, but it's a beautiful motivational energy that has a lot of hopefulness. Sagittarius is a really typically positive sign. Yeah. Fire signs, nothing gets them down for too long. And it's really, look at that. Yeah, 24 degrees to 24 degrees with Eris. And that clarity of self. I'm standing in my truth.
Right. Actually, you know what?
There's the question.
Mercury seems to be the major player in this chart, because it's also an aspect. I think it's in a square to Black Moon Lilith as well, right, on this full moon. So this is a very Mercury-led
square with mean Black Moon.
Yeah.
Yes. But look at Venus. Venus is in her own sign. She rules Taurus, where we've got a lot of special activity. She's conjunct the South Node. I think this is a really beautiful full moon.
Right, it seems to be a lot of very positive energy around communication.
Yeah.
And speaking.
Yeah, I think it's going to help. I don't know if settle us down is quite the right word, but the full moon, the moon and the sun are both squared Saturn. So there's Saturn just turned around, still at the very beginning of, it's like, let's have a do-over of Saturn in Pisces, because it had gotten up to 7 degrees and went back to 0. It's like, okay, let's try this again.
Yeah, we didn't enjoy it the first time around, so we're going to go back and start again, because that didn't quite work out the way that we wanted. But I think that that's a really important motif too, right? We haven't touched on Saturn moving into Pisces, or going direct again in Pisces, because you've already covered it quite a bit. But it is a really, really important energy that's going to be with us for quite a while. And, I'm thinking with the full moon that was in Taurus on the 28th of October being an eclipse, it feels to me that, whenever we have an eclipse, yes, it's for a 6-month period, but the full moon energy that is eclipsed, and I definitely felt it eclipsed on my birthday, has not yet appeared. But I'm thinking that it's going to appear now on this full moon in Sag, which is, like you said, going to reveal many things that ordinarily would be the job of the Scorpio, but because of the eclipse, we weren't able to see it. But as we talked about before, how many big things have now happened in the last few days at a quantum level that many of us have been praying for, and even seeing in recent weeks, actually in the etheric realms, are now about to come to fruition. And, there are some inescapable inevitabilities about the end of an epoch, which I think many people have not really wanted to engage with, but the astrology lays out super clearly. You don't have to believe me, you don't have to believe Kelly, or indeed any of us that have been talking about this stuff, but the astrology doesn't lie. It's there for a reason. And I think that perhaps this full moon is showing us what we should have seen a couple of weeks ago.
Well, should have. That's a very Saturn
Yeah,
phrase.
I use that in speech marks because there is no should. That's just a personal subjective perspective.
So,
But
but Saturn's about that. It's about, okay, reality check, but in Pisces. So we're back to the fluid reality that goes back to the big Sagittarian question is also, it's about belief. It's about, what do you think is true? What do you believe is true?
right.
And it's got to come from your own experience. It can't be coming from the news or telling you what's going on the other side of the world. It's got to be what you're coming from your own experience, which is also that intuitive side. It's like coming into that whole, it's a very creative side, but it is questioning what is the truth. And when we've got Mercury square to Neptune, that's a big question. Like, how is your mind interpreting? Because a lot of us are very blinded. A lot of us see what we want to see. Well, and that's the question. Do you see what you believe, or do you believe what you see? So if you can see what you believe, that's a creator God approach.
I think that's a really important distinction there, Kelley. Just to emphasize to our audience is that what we see and what we hear can be manipulated to create what people want us to believe. But what we feel in the body medicine is unique to us. And it's that body medicine that we can use with kinesiology even that tells us the truth or the falseness of something for us. It may be different for somebody else, and that's for them to work out. And at some point, even with quantum financial systems, as Zachariah shared with us, the 26th dimensional ascended master, he said that the quantum systems of the future will go through a series of jumps as the collective tries to find the integrity at the collective level of, say, different crypto coins or different financial systems or different commodities. And I think that this is where we're heading, because in order for us all to have confidence in the new earth currencies of the future, we need to believe that the tricks of the past are not going to come in underneath the radar. And that's where scrutinization of the integrity and the background of anything, not just currencies, but projects, people, situations, is going to go to a new level that's going to be on an intuitive felt. And we're not going to be convinced by what the media shows us or other people have told us or what we read in the book, because that's all secondhand information. We can understand what we see. Right.
Uranus and Aries is about integrity. And we're getting a lot more discernment along that line, even though there's a lot of delusions, even in this chart. And there's Saturn saying, something about, well, come back to your reality. And again, your feelings. We are not taught much about how to deal with feelings. Mental, yeah, but feelings and trusting them and tuning in and, kind of feeling it out, And so this is more about the compassion and more about, like, okay, everybody's trying to figure it out. And we could have a whole different reality. I mean, maybe the sky is really pink, but we're so used to seeing blue.
And there is a plants that can help with that kind of phenomenon, by the way. I've had situations where the sky has gone, maybe not pink, but it wasn't blue. Hey, but you know what? You've just really excited me with a thought there about Saturn in Pisces, Kelley, which is that maybe the structure of the world to come through the filter of water is that we're going to learn to organize our world through what we feel, right? Rather than what we're being given. And so the new order of Saturn and Pisces is understanding that our structure is going to be based on what we feel inherently with the waters in our own body.
Well, our heart is way more intelligent than our brain.
Yeah,
and the womb is also equally as, like, it's not just about it has something to do with gut level intelligence, I think, in some way, but this is a deeper tapping into soul. So there's a deeper spiritual energy manifesting through the Saturn in Pisces. That's going to open things up, and then it is like, do you believe what you're seeing? There could be quite a lot of reality fluidity here, very much.
I mean, look, as a Scorpio being, having a fairly high level of psychic ability, often what I see on the inner space is not being matched in the 3D by what somebody is telling me or what I'm seeing. I'm like, well, you're telling me blah, 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 but what I'm actually seeing on my inner space is the complete opposite of that. And do I believe you're blah, 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 or do I believe what my higher self is telling me? Well, normally I would go with my own psychic intuitions, but we have to be also prepared to understand that our psychic intuitions can also be hijacked. So again, we can't necessarily completely rely on the visuals we get on the inner space. But if I get a visual and I get a feeling that runs through my whole body, it's like, ping, okay, that resonated with me. That's the truth for me. So I just want to flag that in as well, because we can get tricked sometimes through our psychic senses, even though as a Scorpio, I've learned to rely on those a lot in my life. I've also seen where I've been manipulated through those sometimes in different spaces by people who, or by beings or energies who know how to do that. Let's just leave that one there. But again, I think it's coming back to the feeling, Saturn, the structure, our body. We've got Uranus in Taurus giving us the connectivity to the maverick energies of our higher self, but in the 3D body. Can we harness the electrical impulses that Uranus brings into our body and make sense of it as a sensation that then allows us to electrify the water that Saturn is experiencing in Pisces, so that we get a coherent response from this technology of the body?
Yeah, and I'd like to say that that Mercury square, the black moon in Virgo that you brought up, this is black moon in Virgo. This is the true black moon. See how much it jumped in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Is very in very subtle senses. You know, there's Virgo, the earth energy, nature. This is like the really subtle energies, the sixth senses, the seventh sense, you know, the really fine-tuned senses, and just, you know, fine-tuning them. It's a beautiful connection to nature that can be so helpful at this point. You know, and that's a whole earth triangle here. Black moon in Virgo, Uranus in Taurus, Pluto still in Capricorn. So this is this black moon here is really a key to this chart too.
Wow. That speaks to me very much of grounding the etheric energy into the Sagittarian full moon, which is about higher aspirations too, and how can we bring those higher aspirations through? Because we can have amazing thoughts, as many as have had for many years, about New Earth, but if we don't take any action, they're just going to stay like that. They're going to stay.
This is action time. Mars conjunct the sun for the whole moon cycle. Let's get to it. Do it.
Wow. So this is really cool. Did you have any other KBOs, Kelley, for the full moon, or was this?
No, I just thought after all that discussion, well, we should just say a hello to Haumea, you know, in Scorpio now. So yeah, just to say hi to her. And where I live, it's going to be on the ascendant on the full moon, so that's kind of interesting. But I just had a thought to also there are a lot of people born in the 60s who have extra Pisces, including Chiron and some Saturn, and also Neptune and Scorpio. And then, you know, sometimes they have various planets in Cancer. They are so empathic and tuned in. And so this is their time of really getting that together, really using that capability. That's part of what Saturn is about here too. Using that capability that Saturn can give, you know, from our experience, sometimes the hard way. But this is like this carefulness, this kindness goes a long way. You know, this is like that compassion, self-compassion too. You know, we've got to break those agreements, but we also have to forgive. And I don't know about forget, but, you know, move beyond that, you know, go above and beyond, so to speak, in how we're moving along and following the vision that's truest to our hearts.
Yeah, interesting, you know, and I'm going to give you a quick heads up because you haven't shared it yet, so I'm hoping you've got it somewhere to hand, and if not, I'll keep talking. But you haven't shared the Black Moon Lilith flashpoint. 16 shows in. I know I can rely on you, Kelley, to have that somewhere in front of you. So what have you got?
I've got them tracked through the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Let's see where we're at. So there was one on November 4th.
Wow.
Yep.
And we know that was a big weekend. We're not going to share why on this particular conversation, but for those of you following certain financial threads, you may be aware that some things are going on or have gone on over the
Well,
weekend.
so much in the financial realm with that Uranus and Taurus, no doubt about it. And
Right.
this full moon with Venus in her rulership on the south node, another indicator of, because Venus rules money, Taurus is the money sign. This is Lakshmi. This is the goddess of abundance, just, being showered with golden coins. This is, there she is. And
I'm
whatever.
ready. Nanu. I'm ready to receive, spirits. I'm tired of the old paradigm way
Are
of
we
doing.
ready to receive? Are we ready to let our lives change that much?
Right.
Are we ready to let it just come through?
Are we responsible enough also to receive the abundance the universe wants to offer us, or are we still caught up in 3D BS? But do we have any other flashpoints in the month?
Yeah, so November 4th at 3 plus Virgo.
Mhm.
November 17th at 4 plus Virgo. And then the next one would be, they're going to be a couple in December.
Just give us those anyway, Kelley, as a forerunner, because I like to plug them in.
Yeah, they're the last ones of the year.
Uh-huh.
December 4th to 5th at 6:51. I got that exact. I can't tell you what time. That's a lot of work to figure out exactly when.
I can imagine. 6:51 of Virgo, right?
That's on December 4th to 5th, depending on where you're living. And December 24th at 9 Virgo.
December the 24th of 9 of Virgo. Well, that's Christmas Eve, and I also have I think there's a wave spell, a Mayan wave spell that is finishing on Christmas Day, which is also the end of a bunch of cycles that we've been working on with the Stellar Nations, fixed star astrology. It's the very last day of the last wave spell of the whole journey, and it feels very much like Christmas this year may actually be a Christmas to remember for positive. Certain well-known politicians have been promising us a Christmas for several years now, and I feel like he hasn't quite delivered on that promise without wanting to go into that one. And I'm not talking about standard
Christmas in November. Didn't somebody say that?
You know what? Christmas
No,
can be today, it can be tomorrow.
Where I hear these things. I pick these things up, and they're like, they're like things I've cut out from a magazine to put on my vision board.
But you know what? That's wonderful. So we can really call in these energies, and for those of you who are new to Black Moon Lilith flashpoints, they are the points where the true Black Moon and the mean Black Moon Lilith actually join each other. And Kelley has done a wonderful job over the last 16 shows of highlighting when those are, because if we know when they are, we can actually work with these as a special.
Oh, I have a whole little audio explanation of that on my Substack, starlady.substack.com. So you can look for that. It's an audio piece.
This is a hidden piece of astrology that me and Kelley hit upon some time back now, and I'm for sure, me and Bella have been working with this, and I think you too, Kelley, to use as manifestation points, and they often work well, interestingly, when there are full moon eclipses. When we have to, if we think of putting an intention into a full moon to come out, it's a bit like the rugby player receiving a pass. He can't quite catch it in the full moon, and so he slips it again to the next guy. And he catches and says, don't worry, I'm going to pop the ball down over the try line, but it's not going to be on the full moon today because somehow that pass has been eclipsed, and I'm going to have to pop it down somewhere else.
Well, there was one, remember, there was one on the October 14th eclipse, Lilith flashpoint. Yeah.
So when we work with new moon to full moon, we can also work with flashpoint to flashpoint, and sometimes they do actually coincide with eclipses and full moon. So we can get very, very clever, astrologically speaking, about when to set intentions and when to manifest them. The same we do every month for the new moon and full moon.
That's
but the
a 0-point energy in my book. That's like a 0-point energy.
It's a bit like your womb energy, right? I feel like it's a point like that where we can put in, or we can inseminate the void space that she offers us. Anyway, food for thought, Kelley. So as we come to the end of today's show, let's perhaps take down the chart and we can just give our
good. Okay.
It's been rock and roll for a few months now, and I know in myself and Bella, and probably you too, Kelley, but listening to lots of people out there who've been on the front line for a while, I saw that our fellow astrologer Brasher has decided to step back for a little bit due to some health concerns. Totally resonate with that on many, many levels, and many other channels and YouTubers that I watch are kind of saying the same thing. It's like, I'm done, man. I'm tired. I'm fatigued. I can't keep putting any more out. I don't have anything more to share. I definitely am like, I don't have any more to give everybody. I've given all of the magic that I know shared it for all of the emotions, and I'm ready for something different. I'm ready to step out of that old world into a new world. And I think
we want to do the collaborative thing. I love doing these videos with people, and I can't write as much because I've got like spacebar arthritis.
That's an actual condition, apparently. But you know what? It's the same. We're sat on these computers, Kelley, and what we really want to do is talk in circles around a fire, speak from our heart, and not have to do everything through a screen or with, I get so hot sat in front of this laptop because it's emitting so much heat at me.
Yeah.
But if we didn't use this, we would never have done this show. We would never have done the shows that we've done with people like Pam or other people like that. And I think that's where we have to be a little bit Tyrone Wako about this and say, hey, this equipment is not exactly how I would like it, but I can repurpose it, like many of us have done with Zoom, to make it work for us, right?
Tyrone Wako it. Oh my goodness.
Don't quote me on that one. I don't want any pissed off.
Oh, really?
After me.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And by the way, Tyrone Wako is on my Mercury by birth.
Well, there we go. It makes so much sense, and I love that. And I want to thank you, Kelley, for the amazing ride that we've had over the last 16 shows, 16 months of doing this.
Yeah.
We've
I'm so glad you've been interested in helping me, understand more through our dialogue and different points of view. A lot of things, and discovering that Lilith flashpoint was a highlight for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've learned so much, and hopefully all of our audience has done, with our unique, I think, way of looking at the astrology. We bring something different, both of us from slightly different backgrounds.
Yeah, thanks everybody for listening in, and yeah,
we love you guys. We see the audience figures every month. We know that we have a dedicated following who love what we do, and we love doing these shows for you, and long may it continue. And hopefully with this full moon and a new moon that we've got coming up, or new moon, full moon, we have now the final opportunity to finish all of the bits and pieces and get ready to receive what, as a little boy told us, and I've shared before, is he was speaking in relation to Samhain or Halloween. He said half of the house is going to be in unicorn uniform wearing mode, which is creative spirit, and the other half are going to be in Halloween mode. And I think that we can understand quite clearly that that's a bifurcation story from a 5-year-old. That's what a 5-year-old can be.
Gemini is a very bifurcation sign too. It's about the polarity, the opposites that interact. But we're moving through a gateway to a new paradigm. So some people will go one way and some people go the other.
And as a wonderful tribe member shared in his post recently, he said, I kind of feel bad that I'm in the creative mode, that I'm in the unicorn mode, while there are other people on the planet who are suffering. But as we said all the way through, it's a time of choice, everybody, and we have to be in that 5D perspective that each and every individual has chosen where to be in whatever life's situations they've chosen to be in at this time. That is a karmic contract that each and every one of us set up for this time. And we can be on hand to help as many people as possible. But it's really, really important that we stay in our own center, our own sacred space, our own terrain, so that we can be what we need to be for ourselves. And we can observe and hopefully not absorb the narratives that are given to us, because right now they're not even necessarily true. And there's a whole conversation for another time, but we have
really
to be.
Watch what you're absorbing. That's the Saturn in Pisces. Be careful,
Right.
and choose what you're letting into your field, and just emote compassion for all that is. It's a beautiful waves of grace coming in, and let's let them in. Yeah.
And we shouldn't feel guilty if we're in a place of creativity, because it's our inner creativity that may be what other people karmically have agreed to go through what they're going through, because they know that half of humanity is going to be doing the other work, because it's a job for everybody, each and every conscious being.
Who knows? I mean,
we just don't know. We're only the mind of a Buddha being will know all of this. They say that karma
follow
is a hidden phenomenon that only a Buddha mind can fully understand. So we have to be in a place of humbleness also, that we cannot understand why other people are going through things that we're not, and vice versa. So stay in your heart, stay connected to your higher self, work with the astrology, work with the Black Moon Lilith points, and all of these other wonderful KBOs. And I think we're going to be okay. So final word to you, Kelley. Where would you like to point people again to your Substack, which we'll put in the show notes, and your website?
Yeah, that's where a lot of stuff is happening for me. A star lady, www.substack.com. And, you know, just choose any one of those KBOs that appeals to you, and just see how you can go with that, how that change your perspective and open doors.
Right. So this has been a slightly longer show today, but I think it was important. This is a very critical moment. And, you know, we always try to be in the flow with the energy, Kelley and me. And so I think what Kelley said is really important is don't get overwhelmed by stuff. If you're interested in this, like I am, just pick one asteroid, deep dive with it. Maybe you'll end up knowing more than either of us do, and you know, and you can share that with us somehow in the future. But you know, this is a world of exploration. We are pioneers now, navigating an asteroid field in space and trying to make it make sense for us. And I think that that's hugely exciting. I'm excited by it, and I hope all of you are too.
This is the far out asteroid field.
Right. Yeah, we're not just content with the asteroids in the Mars Jupiter. We're looking at the asteroid belt that's beyond the realm of what we know in our own seen and known universe. So this is exciting stuff, and I think it speaks very much of where we're all headed. So huge thank you, as always, to my co-host, mythologist and author Kelley Hunter. All of you for listening, and I think by the time we see you for the next month's show, we're going to be in a slightly different world. So let's keep it in our hearts and keep it real, and we'll see you all then. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.